The message came through the galaxy's communication network like a scream in the darkness. Ambassador Zefka of the Volani Federation stood before the Galactic Council, her blue-scaled hands shaking as she transmitted the final recordings from the planet Theron 7. The massive screen showed cities burning. Ships shaped like giant beetles descended from the sky, releasing clouds of acid that melted everything below. The Volani people ran through the streets, their peaceful nature offering no defense against the horror that consumed their world. Children cried for parents who would never answer. The recording ended with static as the transmission tower melted. The Korthak Empire has destroyed 17 of our worlds, Zefka said, her voice barely above a whisper. 2 billion of my people are dead. They kill everything that lives. They take our planets and turn them into hives for their young. The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their floating chairs, each one struggling to process what they had seen. The Altarians, with their large eyes and gentle manner, looked away from the screen. The Zenthari, normally quick to offer trade agreements, said nothing. Council leader Vashra of the Koran Empire finally spoke. This is terrible, but the Korthak are far from our space. We must think of diplomatic solutions. Perhaps economic sanctions would... Sanctions? Zefka's voice cracked. They are eating our children. They don't trade with anyone. They only take and destroy. The council murmured among themselves. The Altarians offered medical supplies. The Zenthari promised to stop buying metals from Korthak space, though they had never bought any to begin with. The Quran suggested sending a strongly worded message demanding the Korthak stop their attacks. Zefka listened to their empty words and felt her hope dying. These species had never faced true evil. They solved problems with words and trade deals. They had never met an enemy that could not be reasoned with. As the council session ended with promises to study the situation, an old Zenthari trader approached Zefka. His name was Glisk, and his many scars showed he had traveled to dangerous places. I heard stories, Glisk said quietly, about a young species near the edge of the galaxy. They call themselves humans. They are... He paused, searching for words. They are different. Different how? Zefka asked. They fight, not like us. They fight like they have nothing to lose. Other species stay away from them. They say humans are dangerous, that they almost destroyed their own world many times but somehow survived. Zefka felt a spark of hope. Where can I find them? Glisk gave her the coordinates to a system called Sol. Be careful, he warned. They might help you, but they might also scare you. Humans do not think like us. The journey to human space took 3 weeks. As Zefka's ship approached the Sol system, she saw things that confused her. Space stations that looked like weapons, ships that moved in patterns that made no sense for trade or exploration. Everything seemed designed for war. A human voice came through her communication system. Unknown ship, this is Earth Defense Command. State your business. The voice was calm but had something underneath it that made Zefka's scales shiver. It sounded like barely controlled violence. I am Ambassador Zefka of the Volani Federation, she replied. I seek an audience with your leaders. My people need help. There was a pause. Then the voice said, Follow the escort ships to Earth Station 1. Do not change course. 6 human ships appeared around her vessel. They were smaller than her diplomatic ship, but moved with perfect coordination. Their hulls were gray and covered with weapons she didn't recognize. No decorations, no art, just brutal efficiency. Earth Station 1 was a massive structure that could house millions of beings. As Zefka docked, she noticed that every human she saw wore some kind of uniform. They moved with purpose, like they were always ready for something terrible to happen. She was escorted to a meeting room where 3 humans waited. 2 wore military uniforms covered in medals and rank symbols. The third wore simple clothes but had eyes that seemed to see everything. They introduced themselves as General Martinez, Admiral Chen, and Director Sarah Kim from something called the Intelligence Service. Tell us about your problem, Director Kim said. Zefka showed them the recordings from the destroyed worlds. She explained how the Korthak Empire consumed entire civilizations. She described the billions of dead and the children who would never grow up. The humans watched in silence. Their faces showed no emotion, but something changed in their eyes. When the recordings ended, General Martinez leaned back in his chair. How many ships do the Korthak have? He asked. Our intelligence says about 15,000 combat vessels, Zefka replied. What kind of weapons? Acid projectors, plasma beams, and something that dissolves metals. Admiral Chen nodded. What about their ground forces? Millions of warriors. They are insects, each the size of a human with natural armor and claws. The three humans looked at each other. They seemed to have a conversation without words. What did the Galactic Council offer you? Director Kim asked. Medical supplies. Trade sanctions. Diplomatic protests. General Martinez made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. Diplomacy with genocidal insects. We understand your people are warriors, Zefka said carefully. We hope you might provide advisors or perhaps sell us weapons. The humans were quiet for a long moment. Then Admiral Chen spoke. You don't understand what you're asking for. When humans fight, we don't fight to win territory or resources. We fight to end threats permanently. I don't follow, Zefka said. Director Kim leaned forward. The Korthak have killed 2 billion of your people. That makes them an enemy of all sentient life. We don't do half measures with enemies like that. What are you saying? General Martinez stood up. We're saying that if you want our help, we're going to destroy the Korthak Empire completely. Not defeat them. Not negotiate with them. Destroy them so they can never hurt anyone again. Zefka felt her breathing stop. That would mean total war, Admiral Chen confirmed. We'll need 6 months to prepare. Tell your people to evacuate any system within 50 light years of Korthak space. Why? Zefka whispered. Because, Director Kim said. Her voice as cold as space. When we're done, there won't be any safe place in the galaxy for the Korthak Empire to hide. As Zefka left Earth, she wondered what she had just unleashed. She had come seeking help and found something else entirely. The humans hadn't promised to save her people. They had promised to avenge them. Behind her, the human war machine began to wake up. And across the galaxy, the Korthak Empire continued their slaughter, unaware that they had just made the worst mistake in their species' history. The news of the Volani genocide spread through human space like wildfire. Within hours of Ambassador Zefka's departure, every major news network on Earth showed the recordings of burning cities and dying children. The images triggered something deep in human nature that had been sleeping since they reached the stars. President Chen Wei called an emergency session of the United Nations. For the first time in decades, every nation on Earth agreed on something. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. We cannot stand by while children are murdered, President Chen announced to the world. Today, all of humanity speaks with one voice. The Korthak Empire will face the full might of our species. General Martinez stood before the largest gathering of military leaders in human history. Representatives from every nation's armed forces filled the massive auditorium in Geneva. The room buzzed with tension and barely controlled anger. Ladies and gentlemen, Martinez began. 6 months ago, we were 12 different militaries from 12 different nations. Today, we are one force with one mission: the complete destruction of an enemy that murders children for sport. The transformation began immediately. Every shipyard on Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies stopped their current projects. Civilian construction crews found themselves building warships. Factories that made farming equipment started producing ammunition. Scientists who studied peaceful uses of technology began designing weapons. Dr. Elizabeth Harper had spent her career developing medical nanotechnology. Now she sat in a classified laboratory, figuring out how to turn healing machines into weapons. The irony wasn't lost on her, but the images of dead Volani children made the work feel necessary. The Korthak biology is insect-based, she explained to her team. Their nervous system uses different chemicals than ours. We can design nanobots that specifically target their neural pathways. Will it kill them? Asked Dr. Singh, her research partner. Eventually, but first it will cause massive pain and confusion. They'll know they're dying. Dr. Singh looked uncomfortable. That seems cruel. Dr. Harper brought up the images of Theron 7 on her screen. They dissolve children with acid. Cruelty is what they understand. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. Engineers designed new ship configurations. Tacticians studied every piece of intelligence about Korthak military doctrine. Psychologists tried to understand how a hive mind species thought and how to break it. Admiral Chen walked through the orbital shipyards above Earth. Where once there had been 3 ships under construction, now there were 50. The sound of welding and machinery never stopped. Workers labored in shifts around the clock. How long until the fleet is ready? she asked Chief Engineer Kowalski. The first battle group will be ready in 4 months, he replied. But Admiral, I have to ask, are we building enough ships? Intelligence says the Korthak have 15,000 vessels. Chen smiled grimly. We're not trying to match their numbers, Chief. We're trying to make their numbers irrelevant. The strategy sessions took place in underground bunkers, away from alien observation. Human military doctrine had been theoretical until now. They had never fought a real war in space. But they had something the other galactic species lacked: thousands of years of experience in total warfare. The Korthak expect us to fight like the other species, explained Colonel Zhang, the Army's top strategist. They expect honor codes, rules of engagement, protection of civilians. They don't know that humans invented the concept of acceptable losses. What do you mean? Asked a young naval officer. Other species fight to win territory or achieve political goals. When humans fight, we fight to completely destroy our enemy's ability to threaten us again. We call it total war. The intelligence networks spread across the galaxy like spider webs. Human agents, many of them former criminals recruited for their skills, infiltrated trade stations and information brokers. They bought, stole, and sometimes tortured every piece of data about the Korthak Empire. Director Kim read the reports in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The picture they painted was worse than anyone had imagined. The Korthak didn't just conquer worlds. They systematically exterminated every living thing and replaced it with their own ecosystem. They're not an empire, she realized. They're a plague. Her assistant, Agent Thompson, nodded. The biological analysis confirms it. They can't coexist with other life forms. Their biology requires them to consume and replace everything else. Then there's no possibility of negotiation or surrender? None. This is a species that evolved to be a perfect predator. They've probably done this to thousands of civilizations. The information changed everything. What had started as a rescue mission became something else entirely: the extermination of an exterminator. Meanwhile, other galactic species watched humanity's preparations with growing alarm. Trade ships reported massive fleets gathering in human space. Diplomatic sources spoke of humans discussing weapons that violated every civilized convention of warfare. Ambassador Takala of the Altarian Republic sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council. The humans are preparing for something beyond war. They speak of burning Korthak space clean and leaving nothing alive. I fear we may be witnessing the birth of a new threat. But the warnings fell on deaf ears. The Council was too focused on their own diplomatic solutions to pay attention to what humans were doing on the galaxy's edge. Back on Earth, families said goodbye to their sons and daughters who would crew the warships. Unlike other species that sent professional soldiers to fight, humans were mobilizing everyone. Civilians volunteered to work in factories. Retired veterans came out of retirement. Children too young to fight organized supply drives. Maria Santos kissed her daughter goodbye at the spaceport. Lieutenant Sofia Santos would command a destroyer in the coming battle. "Bring them home safe," Maria whispered. "I'll bring them home, Mama," Sofia replied. "But first we're going to make sure no other mother loses her children to these monsters." As the months passed, the human war machine grew into something the galaxy had never seen. Not just ships and weapons, but an entire civilization focused on a single goal: the complete annihilation of the Korthak Empire. The Korthak themselves remained unaware of the storm gathering in human space. Their scouts reported that the soft mammals were building some ships, but nothing that concerned the Queen Mind. Humans were young and weak like the Villani had been. Queen Mother Skrixka felt amusement through the hive mind as she reviewed the reports. The mammals thought they could challenge the swarm. They would learn the same lesson as all the others. The Korthak were perfect killers, and nothing in the galaxy could stand against them. She was wrong. And in 3 months, when the human fleet arrived in Korthak space, she would discover just how wrong she had been. The sleeping giant was awake now, and it was angry. The first Korthak base died in silence. Commander Sarah Mitchell watched from the bridge of the destroyer HMS Relentless as their missiles found their target. The Korthak listening post in the Zirian system simply vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. No warning, no declaration of war, no chance to send a distress signal. "Target destroyed," reported Lieutenant Hayes. "No survivors detected." "Good," Mitchell said. "Signal the fleet. Begin Operation Cleansing Fire." Across 17 star systems, the same scene played out simultaneously. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately fired on Korthak installations. Supply depots, communication arrays, mining facilities, and patrol bases all died in the first hour of humanity's war. The Korthak had ruled their space for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species and destroyed entire civilizations. Never once had an enemy struck first. Never once had they faced an opponent that attacked without warning or negotiation. Queen Mother Skrixka felt the deaths through the hive mind like physical blows. 17 facilities, thousands of her children. Gone in minutes, impossible, she hissed through her mandibles. No species attacks the swarm without provocation. Her war leader, General Threxka, showed no emotion through his chitinous face. The mammals have declared war through action. They show no honor. Honor is for prey species, the Queen Mother replied. Send the Third Fleet to destroy their pathetic vessels. Show them why the galaxy fears the swarm. The Third Fleet was 200 ships strong, veteran warriors who had destroyed the last 3 Volani worlds. They arrived in the Zirian system expecting to find a small force of panicked mammals. Instead, they found hell. The human fleet was gone. In its place, the space around the former Korthak base was filled with mines, automated weapon platforms, and something the Korthak had never encountered, drones that fought with the tactical intelligence of living beings. Admiral Chen watched the battle from her flagship, the UHNS Retribution. The holographic display showed red dots representing Korthak ships blundering into the trap her engineers had spent weeks preparing. They're fighting exactly like our analysts predicted, reported Captain Morrison, her tactical officer. No adaptation, no tactical flexibility. They just charged straight at the enemy. That worked for them against species that fight honorably, Chen replied. We don't. The Korthak ships, designed to win through overwhelming force and armor, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to engage directly. Human drones swarmed around the larger vessels like angry hornets, targeting specific systems and withdrawing before the Korthak could respond. When Korthak fighters tried to pursue, they found themselves chasing ghosts. Human pilots used their ship's superior speed to lead the enemy into minefields or crossfires from hidden weapon platforms. General Threxka watched his forces die with growing confusion. His tactical computers could not understand the enemy's behavior. They fought without pattern, struck without warning, and disappeared before retaliation was possible. Cowards, he transmitted to his remaining ships. They refused to fight with honor. The human response came as a missile salvo that crippled his flagship. As damage reports flooded in, a new voice came over the communication channel. This is Admiral Chen of the United Human Navy, the voice said in perfect Korthak language. Honor is for species that don't murder children. You want to see how humans fight? Come to the Kepler 442 system. We'll be waiting. The transmission cut off, leaving Threxka staring at the tactical display. Of his 200 ships, only 30 remained functional. The mammals had destroyed an entire fleet while losing only a handful of drones. For the first time in Korthak history, a military commander felt something new. Doubt. News of the Third Fleet's destruction spread through Korthak space like poison. The hive mind, used to constant victory, struggled to process the concept of defeat. Panic, an emotion the Korthak had never experienced, began to spread. Queen Mother Skrixka called her remaining generals to the throne chamber. The massive hall, carved from the bones of extinct species, felt smaller than usual. Fear had a way of shrinking even the largest spaces. How is this possible? She demanded. They are mammals, weak, soft, individualistic. They should be easy prey. War leader Zetka, veteran of 50 conquest campaigns, studied the battle reports with his compound eyes. They fight like nothing we have encountered. No patterns, no honor codes, no respect for the traditions of warfare. What do you mean? They target our supply lines instead of our fleets. They attack our civilians instead of our military. They use weapons that cause unnecessary suffering. They fight like... He paused, searching for the concept. Like they want to hurt us instead of defeat us. The Queen Mother's chitinous claws scraped against her throne. Send the First Fleet. Bring me their homeworld in ashes. But the First Fleet never reached Earth. They found the human fleet waiting in the Kepler 442 system, just as Admiral Chen had promised. This time, the humans didn't hide behind traps and ambushes. They came forward to fight. The Korthak expected a traditional space battle. Instead, they faced something that defied every law of civilized warfare. Human ships rammed Korthak vessels at full speed, their crews dying to take out enemies twice their size. Fighter pilots aimed their damaged craft at Korthak bridges, turning themselves into guided missiles. Captains of crippled ships set their reactors to overload, creating nuclear explosions that damaged nearby enemies. Captain Sofia Santos felt her destroyer shaking apart around her as Korthak acid ate through the hull. Her crew was dead or dying, her weapons were gone, and her ship was falling apart. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. Then she canceled the order. Through the view screen, she could see a Korthak dreadnought approaching to finish them off. Computer set reactor to overload. Authorization Santos Alpha 7. Warning, reactor overload will destroy this vessel and all aboard. Confirmed. Execute. The explosion took out the dreadnought and two smaller escorts. Sofia Santos died with a smile on her face, knowing her sacrifice had saved dozens of human lives. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Humans fought with a desperation and fury that the Korthak couldn't understand. They seemed to value victory more than their own lives. When the battle ended, both fleets were destroyed. But the psychological impact on the Korthak was devastating. They had won a technical victory, but at a cost that made no sense. The humans had traded one ship for 2 or 3 Korthak vessels, a ratio that would destroy the Empire if it continued. Worse, the humans seemed happy about it. Intercepted communications from the human fleet spoke of taking the bastards with us and making them pay for every inch. The Korthak realized they were fighting an enemy that considered mutual destruction acceptable. Outcome Queen Mother Skrixka listened to the reports in growing horror. The humans had lost more ships than the Korthak, but they were celebrating. Their news broadcasts spoke of heroes who had died taking enemies with them. Their leaders promised to send more fleets, bigger fleets, until every Korthak was dead. They're insane, she whispered. They fight like they want to die. General Threxka, now missing 2 limbs from the earlier battle, made a sound that might have been agreement. No, my queen, they fight like they want us to die, and they don't care what it costs them. For the first time in their species' history, the Korthak Empire faced an enemy that scared them. The humans didn't just want to win. They wanted complete destruction, and they were willing to pay any price to achieve it. In the depths of space, more human fleets were approaching, each one larger than the last, each one carrying weapons that violated every civilized convention of warfare. The war was just beginning, and already the Korthak could feel something they had never felt before. The cold touch of fear. The first sign that something was wrong came when the mining colony on Thresh 7 stopped responding to communications. General Threxka, his carapace still bearing scars from his encounter with human forces, dispatched a patrol to investigate. They found the colony intact, but empty. Every Korthak on the planet had simply vanished. No signs of battle, no bodies, no evidence of what had happened. The miners had just disappeared. Within hours, 3 more colonies reported similar incidents. Korthak workers would be at their posts one moment, gone the next. The hive mind felt each disappearance like a wound, a sudden absence where there should have been consciousness. Dr. Elizabeth Harper observed the results of her nanobots from the safety of a cloaked human research vessel. The tiny machines had been dispersed through the atmosphere of 4 Korthak worlds, invisible and undetectable until activated. Neural disruption is complete, she reported to Admiral Chen. The nanobots severed the connection between individual Korthak and their hive mind before causing complete system shutdown. Casualties? Chen asked. 100% on all 4 worlds. No human losses. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. The weapons violated every treaty about biological warfare that humanity had ever signed, but those treaties had been written for wars between humans. The Korthak had forfeited any claim to mercy when they dissolved children with acid. Queen Mother Skrixka felt the losses through the collective consciousness like missing pieces of her own mind. Entire colonies wiped out without warning or explanation. Her children simply ceased to exist. How? She demanded of her remaining generals. How do they strike at worlds deep in our territory without sending ships? No one had an answer. The humans were fighting a war unlike anything in Korthak experience. They attacked from shadows, struck at the heart of the Empire, and used weapons that the Korthak couldn't even detect until it was too late. But the biological weapons were just the beginning. Captain Marcus. Wolf crouched in the ventilation shaft of the Korthak supply depot on Xerek Prime. His team of 12 Special Forces soldiers had infiltrated the facility through methods that would have been impossible for most species. Humans, however, were excellent at breaking into places they didn't belong. "Charges set," whispered Sergeant Miller through the comm link. "This is going to level the entire complex." "Good," Wolf replied. "Make sure you get the communications array, too. We want them to know we were here." The explosion could be seen from orbit. The largest ammunition depot in Korthak space became a miniature sun for 30 seconds, taking with it enough weapons to supply 10 invasion fleets. But more important than the material damage was the message it sent. Nowhere was safe. Over the following weeks, human Special Forces teams struck at targets throughout Korthak space. Command centers exploded in the night. Supply convoys vanished without trace. Key military leaders died in their sleep, killed by invisible assassins who left no evidence of their presence. The Korthak military machine, built on the assumption of absolute control over their territory, began to break down. Commanders became paranoid, seeing human infiltrators everywhere. Troops were reassigned from the front lines to guard supply depots and communication centers. "They're fighting like terrorists," General Vashka complained to the Queen Mother. "No honor, no codes of conduct, no respect for military tradition. Then we will respond in kind," the Queen Mother decided. "Target their civilian populations. Show them the price of defying the swarm." The Korthak fleet that approached the human colony on New Harmony expected an easy target. Intel suggested the world was defended by only a handful of patrol ships and a single orbital platform. Instead, they found the entire civilian population armed and waiting. The colony's mayor, a former Marine named Janet Walsh, had spent 3 weeks turning farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers. When the Korthak dropships landed, they faced not helpless civilians but a militia that fought with the fury of cornered animals. "This is our home," Walsh transmitted to the Korthak forces as bullets and energy beams filled the air around the landing zone. "You want it, you'll have to take it from our dead hands." The battle for New Harmony lasted 6 days. The Korthak, expecting easy prey, found themselves fighting door to door through a city where every building was a fortress and every civilian was a combatant. Children who should have been playing with toys threw grenades at enemy soldiers. Elderly shopkeepers sniped from rooftops with hunting rifles. When it was over, the colony was destroyed. But the Korthak had paid a price that made no military sense. They had lost an entire assault division to capture a farming settlement with no strategic value. More disturbing were the recordings the humans broadcast across the galaxy. Video footage of Korthak soldiers killing human children, set to music that somehow made the images even more heartbreaking. The propaganda was crude but effective, showing the universe exactly what the Korthak Empire was. Other species who had remained neutral in the conflict began to reconsider their positions. Trade routes to Korthak space closed down. Diplomatic ties were severed. The galactic community, horrified by the images of human children dying, started to support the human war effort. But the real psychological weapon was something the Korthak had never encountered: human prisoners who refused to break. Lieutenant Commander David Park had been captured during a failed raid on a Korthak communication center. For weeks, the Korthak interrogators tried to extract information about human military plans. They used pain, drugs, and psychological torture that had broken every other species they had encountered. David Park laughed at them. "You think this hurts?" he asked through broken teeth as the torturer applied another neural disruptor. "My grandmother survived the siege of Stalingrad. My father was a prisoner of war for 3 years. Pain doesn't scare humans. We invented most of these techniques." The interrogator, a veteran of 100 campaigns, felt something it had never experienced: helplessness. The human's mind was like a fortress, protected by generations of ancestors who had endured worse suffering and emerged stronger. "What do you want?" the Korthak finally asked. David smiled, blood running down his chin. "I want you to know that every human you kill makes us angrier. Every colony you destroy makes us more determined. You're not fighting an army bug. You're fighting a species that has survived ice ages, plagues, and global wars. And we're just getting started." The recording of the interrogation, somehow leaked to human intelligence, became a rallying cry throughout human space. David Park's words were painted on the sides of ships, broadcast on recruitment posters, and repeated by soldiers before battle. As the war entered its 4th month, Queen Mother Skrixka realized that the Korthak Empire was losing. Not militarily, they still had more ships and controlled more territory. But they were losing the war of will, the battle for survival itself. The humans fought like a species with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Every defeat made them stronger. Every casualty made them more determined. They were winning by refusing to accept that they could lose. "Order the withdrawal of all forces to the core worlds," she commanded. "We will make our stand at the home world." But even as she gave the order, she knew it was too late. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were rewriting the rules of warfare itself, showing the galaxy that some species would do anything, pay any price, to protect the innocent. And they were coming. The human fleet that arrived at the edge of Korthak Prime's solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 2,000 ships of every size and configuration, from massive dreadnoughts to tiny fighters, all bearing the same message painted on their hulls: for the children of Theran 7. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UHNS Retribution, watching the tactical display that showed the heart of the Korthak Empire. The homeworld was defended by every ship the enemy could muster, nearly 8,000 vessels arranged in perfect defensive formations around their planet. "They're expecting a traditional siege," reported Captain Morrison. "Classic formation, overlapping fields of fire, everything by the book." "Too bad we threw away the book," Chen replied. "Signal all ships. Begin Operation Final Solution." The name had been chosen carefully. Every human in the fleet knew what it meant. This wasn't just a military operation. It was the elimination of a threat that could never be allowed to exist again. The battle began not with the grand charge that Korthak doctrine expected, but with something that confused their tactical computers. The human fleet scattered. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum firepower, the humans split into hundreds of small groups. Some headed for the outer planets of the system. Others moved toward the asteroid belts. A few even retreated as if giving up the fight before it started. Queen Mother Skrixka watched from her command center deep beneath the surface of the homeworld. Her remaining generals clustered around the tactical displays, their compound eyes trying to make sense of human behavior. "They're running," suggested General Vexka. "Perhaps they realized the futility of attacking our stronghold." But war leader Threx Ka, scarred veteran of too many human encounters, made a sound of disagreement. "No, they're planning something. Humans don't retreat when they're winning." He was right. While the Korthak fleet maintained its defensive positions, human ships throughout the system began their real work. Engineering vessels attached massive engines to asteroids, turning space rocks into guided missiles. Mining ships burrowed into planets and moons, placing charges in strategic locations. Science vessels released clouds of nanobots into the system's star. The Korthak, focused on the approaching human warships, didn't notice the preparations until it was too late. The first asteroid struck a Korthak battle station with the force of a nuclear weapon. Before the defenders could react, dozens more followed. Entire defensive platforms disappeared under the impact of rocks moving at significant fractions of the speed of light. "Impossible," Queen Mother Skrixka hissed. "They're using the system itself as a weapon." But the asteroid bombardment was just the opening move. As Korthak ships moved to intercept the improvised missiles, the human fleet struck from 6 directions at once. They had used the confusion to surround the enemy completely. Captain Sofia Santos, somehow alive despite her ship's destruction months earlier, commanded a squadron of destroyers that had been hiding in the shadow of Korthak Prime's largest moon. Her new ship, the UHNS Vengeance, led the charge into the enemy formation. "All ships, this is Santos. Remember what they did to our children. Make them pay for every life they took." The response came as a roar of agreement from 1,000 human voices. Ships that had been named for peaceful concepts: harmony, hope, unity, opened fire with weapons designed to cause maximum suffering to the enemy. The Korthak fleet found itself fighting a 3-dimensional battle that moved faster than their tactical computers could process. Human ships appeared from behind moons, dropped out of faster-than-light travel inside their formations, and used the gravity of planets to accelerate beyond what should have been possible, but The real shock came when the nanobots in the system's star reached critical mass. Dr. Elizabeth Harper watched from her command ship as her final creation activated. The nanobots began converting the star's outer layers into a focused beam of energy that could be directed like a weapon. Stellar. Engineering complete, she reported to Admiral Chen. We now have control of their sun. The first blast from the weaponized star vaporized a Korthak dreadnought instantly. The second took out an entire squadron. Within minutes, the humans were using the Korthak's own star as an artillery piece, targeting specific ships with precision that defied belief. Queen Mother Skrixka felt the hive mind breaking apart as thousands of her children died in space above her world. The collective consciousness that had unified the Korthak for millennia began to fragment under the stress of losses too massive to comprehend. Surrender, General Threxka advised. We cannot fight an enemy that controls the laws of physics themselves. Never, the Queen Mother replied. The swarm does not surrender. Then the swarm dies, said a new voice. Admiral Chen's image appeared on every screen in the Korthak command center. Her face was calm, but her eyes held the cold promise of absolute destruction. This is Admiral Chen of the United Human Navy, she said. I am offering you one chance to surrender unconditionally. You will disarm all military forces, submit to human oversight, and provide reparations for the species you have destroyed. What if we refuse? Queen Mother Skrixka demanded. Chen's expression didn't change. Then in 10 minutes I will use your own star to sterilize every world in this system. Every Korthak will die. Your species will be extinct. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of explosions from the battle raging above. Through the command center's walls, the Queen Mother could feel the death of her empire. You're bluffing, she said. No species would commit genocide. You committed genocide against the Volani, Chen replied. Against dozens of other species. You forfeit the right to mercy when you dissolve children with acid. To prove her point, Chen redirected the stellar weapon toward one of the system's outer planets. The dead world vanished in a flash of stellar fire, leaving nothing but expanding plasma. 9 minutes, Chen said. The Queen Mother looked around at her remaining generals. She saw fear in their compound eyes, terror that the Korthak had never felt before. The humans had turned their own system into a weapon and pointed it at their heads. We surrender, she whispered. The words rippled through the hive mind like poison. For the first time in their species' history, the Korthak had been completely defeated. The surrender terms were harsh but fair. All Korthak military forces were disbanded. Their warships were destroyed or converted to peaceful uses. The surviving population was relocated to a handful of worlds under human supervision. Most importantly, the Korthak were forced to make reparations to every species they had harmed. They would spend the next 1,000 years working to rebuild the civilizations they had destroyed. Ambassador Zefka stood in the ruins of Theran 7, watching human engineers and Korthak workers laboring side by side to rebuild her world. The city was rising again, but this time it was protected by human weapons that could turn stars into artillery. Was it worth it? She asked Admiral Chen, who had come to oversee the reconstruction. Chen looked up at the sky where human patrol ships maintained their eternal watch. My people died to save yours. Sofia Santos crashed her ship into a Korthak dreadnought to protect children she had never met. David Park endured torture rather than betray human positions. Was their sacrifice worth it? Zefka watched a group of human and Volani children playing together in the rubble of what had once been a school. Yes, she said, it was worth it. The war was over, but its consequences would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity had proven that some species would go to any length to protect the innocent. The Galactic Council, humbled by human military might, invited Earth to join as a permanent security member. Other aggressive empires quietly reconsidered their expansion plans. The humans had shown that they possessed something more dangerous than advanced technology or superior numbers: the absolute determination to destroy any threat to innocent life. And in the depths of space, human patrol fleets continued their watch, ready to answer the next call for help with the same words that had started it all: we'll be there. The galaxy was a safer place, protected by a species that believed some things were worth dying for, and some enemies were worth destroying completely. Humanity had answered the Volani's desperate plea not with diplomacy or half measures, but with total war. and they had won.